Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm so pleased that we've got people joining us from all over the globe today as we go on this adventure to the very top and the very bottom of this beautiful planet of ours. My name is Becky. I'm the head of sales here at Explore and a massive polar enthusiast. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. So coming up, what can you expect from our event today? So we're going to be giving you a short intro to who we are, and then we'll welcome the team from the Greg Mortimer, Sylvia Earle and Douglas Mawson ships. And they're going to transport you to a world of jaw-dropping wildlife and scenery, as well as give some key information on the citizen science projects which are on board the vessels. They'll also dip into how a day in the life of a polar voyage runs to give you an idea of what to expect on these spectacular trips. We'll then finish with some time for some questions. So if you've got questions for our experts today, and then we'll have a very exciting exclusive offer available for you all and a prize draw at the end. Before we get started, a few tips just to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. I can see everybody's already hitting up the chat function. That's fantastic to see. Yeah, just run through. So everybody is automatically on mute, but definitely make use of the chat. Say hello to each other. Say hello to the team here. And then we've also got a Q&A feature separate to the chat, where we will be able to kind of answer any questions that you've got. We've got a team on hand to help with that. In the chat, it'd be great if you could tell us if you've already been on a Explore Polar adventure, or if you're planning to go, where you're, where's on your bucket list to visit. And as already mentioned, yeah, for the questions themselves, if you can pop those in the Q&A, just makes it a lot easier for us to be able to administer and get back to you and get all that information out after the event as well. And so we've got a team of experts who are going to be answering the questions as we go. We'll keep some of those questions, so don't worry if your question hasn't been asked. You will get an answer, but we might be loving that question and keeping it back for the panel at the end of the presentations. If you do need to duck out or you miss anything, don't worry. We are recording the session and we'll send it out along with the summary of the most frequently asked questions at the end of the event. And you'll also get an email with the offer and information as well towards the end of this week. So as I said, just a bit of info about Explore. I know that a lot of you will know us very, very well, so welcome back. But there's some of you who might not be as familiar with us. And so just to let you know, we run over 350 small group adventures to more than 100 countries worldwide. We've got classic discovery trips, walking trips, cycling, and family-specific tours, all with small groups, around about an average group size of 11 on our group trips. We've got expert local leaders and unforgettable experiences, which I'm sure anybody who has been on one of our Explore trips already will be able to share in that chat function at the bottom of your screen. We also offer my personal favourite. I'm a little bit biased. I should probably love all of our trips equally, but I love the polar trips most of all. And that's obviously what we're going to be focusing on today with you. So why would you choose Explore for your polar voyage? Well, we've recently received a Platinum Trusted Service Award from FIFO because our customers' reviews for the last 3 years have been over 4.5 out of 5. It's something that we're really proud of here at Explore. We've also recently become a B Corp accredited company, and that means that we're equally invested in the planet and people as much as we are for profit. And again, a really important part of Explore's ethos. We've got unforgettable experiences, and our aim is for you to spend as much time as possible off the ship when you're on our trips, experiencing the amazing landscapes and wildlife up close. All of our polar ships have an onboard team of highly experienced expedition crew and naturalist guides, and they really do make those trips absolutely exceptional. The size of our ships is really important. So for the ships that we work with, they carry a maximum capacity of 200 passengers. And by traveling on a smaller capacity ship, it means that you spend much more time kind of off the ship and enjoying the landscapes than you do waiting to embark and disembark. And it also means that with the smaller ships, you can get closer to the shoreline and visit places that some of the very large ships that visit these regions just aren't able to. Sustainability is at the heart of what we do, and we only work with partners who have the same values as we have, and they subscribe to the highest environmental and safety guidelines. So all of our partnerships and shore excursions are in full compliance with the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators and the Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators. a bit of a mouthful, but really, really important when you're choosing polar trips, that you're looking for people who work with these organisations, because it's how we protect these pristine environments. Finally, you'll see in today's presentations as well that we only work with suppliers that have a strong emphasis placed on environmental guidelines and discussions about the issues facing these fragile environments and their wildlife. So for now, let me introduce you to the people who are going to be talking tonight. Probably had enough of me already. So to meet the team, so I'm delighted today that I'm going to be joined by travel and environmental journalist Mark Stratton, and then also Alex Cowan, who's worked as a guide and expedition leader in both the Arctic and Antarctica for over a decade. Behind the scenes, you've got Eliza, our polar expert in our customer services team, Vanessa, our polar product manager, as well as Karen, who's joining us from the Greg Mortimer, Sylvia Earle and Douglas Morton ship team. They'll all be busy answering your questions whilst we go along. So last but not least, most definitely not, we've got my colleague Hannah, who is our sustainability specialist. And I'm handing over to her right now, and she's going to give you a quick run through Explore's sustainability plans.
Awesome. Thanks, Becky. And hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm the Sustainability Specialist at Explore. And today I just wanted to briefly share some info on what sustainability means to us. And firstly, perhaps controversially, I'm going to admit that I don't actually like the word sustainability. I think it's quite woolly, it's quite vague. And often when people hear it, they think it's about taking things away. So instead at Explore, we try and be more specific on what it means to us. We want something we can refer to when we're making decisions that will help us keep on track with our goals. So we use this statement: protecting our futures by reconnecting people with nature and communities. What do we mean by that, really? I guess I'd sum it up by saying in our busy digital lives, we kind of spend less time outside. And right now, the world is a little bit disconnected with nature, which is why exciting destinations like the polar regions get us reconnected. We are nature. It's us, it's our wildlife, our water, the air that we breathe. So by remembering that connection, it's a bit easier for us to make purposeful decisions and make sure we're creating a positive impact. And also that we're striving to minimize any negative impacts. So, when we're putting a trip together, we're asking, what are the impacts of this trip? Are we working hard enough to minimize emissions? Are we working hard enough to ensure that we're protecting the destination and the communities that we're visiting? And it's not just the holidays we create, it's how we run our offices, how we treat our staff, how we pick the partners we work with. Because the tourism industry, it's got a really extensive supply chain. And with that brings enormous potential to create a positive impact by working with suppliers that share our values and want to use our love of travel as a force for good. I'm really proud to say that we're a certified B Corp, as are our partners, Aurora Expeditions, and that B in B Corp stands for benefit. It's a movement that's ensuring that our business operates with benefits for people and the planet at the forefront of our minds. One of the things we focus on is our climate action plan. So our business is helping the world, people explore the world. So we need to make sure we're doing what we can to protect it, which is quite a challenge, I'm not going to lie. I'd love to say I've got the answers, but I don't. But what I do have is a clear strategy for us to follow. And the first thing for us is to measure our emissions. And as part of that, we calculate and publish the footprint of all of the tours that Explore operate. Then we set a reduction target, because once you've measured, the next step is to focus on reducing. And ours is in line with the Glasgow Declaration, which is an industry wide commitment for us to reduce our emissions by 50% by 2030. And then the hard work begins. We've actually got to reduce them. And this is actually fun. It can range from switching out a domestic flight on a trip to redesigning entirely new trips. And there are so many great changes we can make that reduce carbon but enhance the experience. It's all about that experience. Now, we can't eliminate our emissions. We're a travel company and we love to travel. We're never going to stop. So, the third part of our climate action plan is to mitigate the emissions that we can't remove. And we do it in three ways: by investing in carbon removal technology, really clever tech that works to draw carbon out from the atmosphere, stuff that's already been emitted. We also invest in regenerating nature with Rewilding Britain, and we support our wonderful partners, Cool Earth, who are working hard to protect ancient rainforests because we know that that's so important for biodiversity and in turn fighting climate change. So, to keep it simple, if I could sum up our approach, it would be: we strive to do the right thing. you can call it whatever you want, call it sustainability, call it purpose. It's thinking about doing the right thing for people and the planet. It's not always easy. It's rarely easy. We'll get it wrong sometimes, and I'm actually completely okay with that as long as we constantly learn and strive to improve. So I'm going to finish there because there's so much more I could share with you, but then we risk not getting to hear Mark and Alex talk about their amazing experiences. So for now, I'll say goodbye and hand you back to Becky.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, it really does kind of run through everything that we do here at Explore. I think most recently I was asked yesterday how I commute to work, so I could proudly tick down that I come over on foot. But yeah, always looking for how we can better record and then look how we can kind of mitigate. Yeah, thank you for all of that. I'm going to hand over now to Mark Stratton. So he's a globe-trotting travel and environmental journalist and radio broadcaster, and has visited both the polar regions on many occasions. He's going to talk to us today about the amazing citizen science projects that he got involved with on his latest trip. So handing it over to you, Mark.
Well, good evening, and my name is Mark Stratton. I'm a journalist and radio broadcaster. I've been down to Antarctica and the Arctic and the subantarctic islands on many occasions, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about something which will be very prevalent in your voyage, which is citizen science. And there's the first successful start to the evening. I've actually managed to move my slide presentation along without having a technological failure. So that's a good start. Look, what is citizen science? Citizen science is where passengers get involved with scientific data collection on their voyages. Now, it's not mandatory. You don't have to do this, but it's a very, very big part of your voyage. And you'll soon discover that if you head down to the poles or up to the poles. And I found a very nice definition online. It says citizen science turns expedition cruise ships into scientific research platforms with passengers involved in collecting data as part of collaborative projects with professional scientists. Now, the sort of science you'll be getting involved with will include ornithology, biology, meteorology, and oceanography. And it's the relationship between cruise vessels, or small expedition vessels, in this case, we'll be talking about tonight, going down to the poles or up to the poles, and science has been very much strengthened in recent years by a wonderful polar citizen science collective. And you'll be hearing from one of their co-founders, Alex Cowan, later in this talk. Now, citizen science, what actually is it? So one objective is to collect data that can enable informed decisions to be made by scientists and administrators in Antarctica. And it's got a real practical basis of actually working. For instance, whale sightings in some of the more popular places to visit in Antarctica have helped inform some new go-slow zones of 10 knots, around 17 zones in the Antarctic Peninsula region. And this has enabled ships to, it's said to these ships, basically, you've got to slow down here because our passengers have been seeing a lot of whales. And so we've got these go-slow zones. So it actually contributes to the policy of this region. It enables scientists to carry out research. Can you imagine the cost of actually setting up an expedition to go down to Antarctica as an expedition scientist? Very, very expensive. So you, if you like, are the foot soldiers. You're down there, you can help gather basic data for their research. I believe fundamentally that being involved in citizen science adds value to your voyage. One of the biggest criticisms I get when I'm writing is I'll publish something and then I'll get a whole barrage of criticism saying you shouldn't be down there. Well, of course, I do leave a carbon footprint, but I believe citizen science can help mitigate that for the good in the long run. And also, it's a sign that you are traveling with an ethical operator. I've been on some ships where they've offered very poor citizen science. I know the company we're talking about tonight, A Expeditions Aurora, who Explore will be selling, and they have a terrific citizen science program. And for me, that gives them an extra cachet, why I want to travel with them. Now, I believe that every vessel that goes down to Antarctica has a moral duty of care to these fragile environments to offer citizen science. And why is it necessary? Well, look, I'm sure you've been deluged on social media and online and on TV programs about global warming, ice shelves collapsing, glaciers melting, and the impact of fresh water melting into the saline water of these regions and making changes impacting the wildlife and their food chains. But the key thing is, when you're doing citizen science, is not to feel overwhelmed that your citizen science effort is just a drop in the ocean, because every little bit of data, research data, counts. And I'm going to show you now explain now some of the projects which are available to you as a citizen scientist. There's about half a dozen. As soon as you start sailing out into the Drake's Passage, let's imagine you're sailing down to the Antarctic Peninsula, which is the most northerly part of the Antarctic continent. You leave from the tip of South America, either from Ushuaia in Argentina or from Punta Arenas in Chile. And the first thing you see when you get into the body of water in between which is called the Drake's Passage, is seabirds, lots of seabirds, and very, very quickly albatross as well, which is one of the great attractions of sailing in this region. And this project is called the eBird Survey. It's an app, and it's aimed at recording seabirds, the abundance of them and the different types of them. You'll go out on deck, you will spend 30 minutes recording all of that data. You'll have a monocular with you, or binoculars, or a long lens. I take a long lens. And all the data is inputted into a globally used app called eBird. And this can help any researchers to analyze trends in the diversity and quantity of birds and how they're being affected by various changing factors in this region. And for me, also, the value of this is it enables you to get to know the birds really, really well by judging them, how they fly and how they look in the air. And it's a really great learning tool to go out and participate in the eBird survey. I've got a grey-cheeked albatross here, a wonderful Antarctic tern in the middle. There's to the right of the screen with the dark blue sea. We've got the penguin killers, the southern giant petrels. Down at the bottom, we've got a black-browed albatross. You're very likely to see that on the Drake's Passage when you're doing a survey. There's a beautiful cormorant, imperial cormorant in the middle slide, closer to land, and a very delicate little bird at the end called the Wilson storm petrel. And you get to know those very well by going out and doing this work. So the Global Cloud Observer with NASA, this is a really interesting project as well. Basically, you'll go out with your citizen science coordinator, who will be one of the expedition team on board, and you will look up at the clouds and you will analyze the cloud cover and the cloud types. And what is useful about this is to look at how changing sea temperatures are rising and how this is likely to be affecting currents and weather patterns. And the timing of this is done when the Globe Observer, NASA satellite, goes over the Earth, and you'll be beneath it. And what they'll be doing is they'll be looking down and recording images of the top of the clouds, but you will be supplementing data from the base of the cloud, adding a more complete picture. And it's also it's a great excuse to go outside and really enjoy those amazing environments you get, these wonderful cloud seascapes and landscapes you will see throughout your voyage. Phytoplankton is another project, and you're more likely to do this when you're down in the Antarctic Peninsula, which is a sort of shattered archipelago of islands surrounding the main Antarctic continent. There's a particular project called Fjord Phyto, and this is looking at how melting glacial freshwater is affecting phytoplankton. Now, phytoplankton is really interesting, and we really need phytoplankton. It's very, very important for every breath of oxygen we take. And these are single-celled vegetative blooms, and they are found at the base of the food chain, and they're also a critical component in absorbing atmospheric carbon. And this Fjord Phyto project is run in conjunction with an Argentinian University, La Plata, and the Scripps Ocean Institute. And it means you'll go out on a Zodiac, which is a small inflatable dinghy. There might be sort of 6 to 8 of you. You'll need a bit of space to move around in. And you'll be scooping up phytoplankton in the nets to take back to the laboratory or send samples away. And your ship laboratory, that is. And also you might be dipping a dish. You'll be taking sea temperature readings, and you'll be dipping your this implement called a Secchi disc, so you can gauge how high or how low the phytoplankton is in the water column. And when you get back to the ship, if your ship has a laboratory on it, a microscope set up, and I'll mention that later, you can view the phytoplankton and some zooplankton. Zooplankton are organisms which feed off of phytoplankton, and they're critical for the feeding of penguins and baleen whales. And you can go there, you can go back and have a look at these very space-age sort of alien-looking creatures underneath the microscope. It's a really fascinating and interesting part of a trip. The small stuff is just as important, if not more important, than those big things you're going to see, the penguins and the whales, etc. And I had the great privilege to delve really deeply into this back in 2020. And this is the potential that ships offer, expedition cruise vessels offer. It's to actually host scientists. And we were with the Woods Hole Institute. So I was on a normal passenger voyage, and we had 6 members of the Woods Hole Institute, a very famous oceanographic institute in Massachusetts, USA. And they come on board to test a particular hypothesis. And we help them with analyzing krill, phytoplankton research, whale spotting. And their theory was around the species of humpback whales. And every time we got really engaged, they were giving lectures to us, so we learned an awful lot, and we got very engaged in a remarkable project. And what you can see here is one of the scientists, one of the lead scientists, tagging a humpback whale. It's a tag which will blow off after an hour, but they use it to record the diving patterns of those whales. And what they were trying to prove was humpback whales have a 6th sense, namely that they can actually sense their krill from a long way away by this unknown sense. And it's basically they are able to sense something called DMS, dimethyl sulfide, which is a residue, a gaseous residue coming from zooplankton, which they feed upon. So it was a marvelous voyage, and just shows the potential to make great leaps forward in scientific discovery by hosting scientists. I absolutely love whales. I'm a total fanatic, and I spend so much of my time out on deck looking for whales. And in particular, I'm looking for when a whale, particularly humpback whales, because they're very active and very busy in the Antarctic environment, the whale will suddenly reach up and submerge, and its tail will go down in front of your eyes vertically. And I'm looking for the inside of that tail, or the fluke, the tail fin fluke, and which has a very distinctive pattern. And happy whale ID is something you can do all the time. You don't need to have a science coordinator with you. You just take your long lens and you're looking to snap that part of the tail fin, because it's like an individual footprint. You take that photograph, you upload it to the Happy Whale ID app. And if they've seen that whale before, then you're providing valuable data about the migrationary pattern of that whale. Typically, the whales range between the mid-latitudes, particularly where the females go to calves. Then they come back down for sort of November, March period to feed again down in Antarctica. So it's very useful data. But if you actually have the incredible privilege of spotting a whale for the first time, as I did in 2022 on a voyage, you get to name it. And I wasn't the only one that spotted it on this voyage. A few of us got the photographs, and we got together and we decided we'd call the whale Quest Antarctica. And that was named after, as we were all Shackleton fans, and that was named after the ship called the Quest, which is where Shackleton died in 1922 off the coast of South Georgia. And I'm going to show you what exactly we're looking for. I've zapped lots and lots of pictures with my long lens of whales. You can see the top middle. There's a humpback whale spy hopping. Down the bottom in the right-hand corner, there is a breaching humpback whale, and you can see the blow in the top hand left corner of the whale. But what I'm looking for is the middle shot, this very colorful looking inside tail fin, which functions basically as a sort of individual fingerprint of that particular whale. It's colored here by something called diatoms, so it's very, very easy to spot. And the more time you spend out there on the citizen science projects and getting involved and actually trying to photograph whales, you'll get some surprises. And this was my last voyage down to the Weddell Sea in Antarctica, when a pod of 6 eco-type A orca appeared, the biggest orca in the region, the seal hunters, and it was just magnificent. Again, if you're in the right place, you see these things, and citizen science gets you out on deck to enjoy this. And of course there is, well, I think you'd have to been locked away in a cardboard box for the last 10 years not to have heard microplastics, this pernicious threat to our seas. Microplastics are essentially less than 5 millimeters in length. Okay, so very, very tiny bits of plastic which are working their way into our food webs and into living organisms. So this is a great threat as plastic breaks down in our ocean. And it's certainly being recorded in Antarctica, in zooplankton, and some strange looking organisms called salps. And this is a very easy project to do, and it's a very interesting one. So you find a nice sandy beach. I've done this on a number of beaches around Antarctica. You lay out a quadrat of rope, being quite careful to avoid penguin poo, because it's got possibly one of the most toxically bad smelling things on Earth. And you take some samples and you run them through a sieve with seawater, and you see what's left in the sieve. Are there any fragments of microplastic? I was doing one a couple of seasons ago down in Deception Island, which is Deception Island has some beautiful black sand beaches. It's an active volcano, submerged volcano in the South Shetland Islands, and we found some suspicious pieces of plastic, well, what looked like plastic. So we go back to the ship here, and we look through the microscope, and we found actually they were organic matter. They were just fragments of bone. But I have, unfortunately, done these surveys and come across microplastic. I've thrown in this slide at the top. It's got nothing to do with Antarctica, though essentially it has, because of the global circulatory systems. I was on a ship in West Africa just a few months ago, and we moored our vessel off the coast of Côte d'Ivoire at a port called Abidjan. And when I came back after exploring the town, there was a ring of plastic all around the boat. So you can see where this is coming from. I'm not saying just West Africa. This is a massive global issue. One of the ships you're going to sail on is named after this absolutely amazing lady, Dr. Sylvia Earle, possibly the most famous marine biologist on the planet. She's in her 80s now, incredibly lucid. I had the true honor of actually meeting her down in Ushuaia in 2022 at an event organized by Aurora, or AE Expeditions, who Explore are working with here on their Antarctic program. And she's an incredible woman. She founded something called Mission Blue, which is igniting public support for a global network of marine protected areas. And she's a National Geographic scientist as well. And we had a long interview, and she really spoke very, very positively about citizen science and the positive impact we can have in this environment. And this is a great quote. This is direct from her mouth. She said, "You're not just coming to be entertained. You're coming to be informed, inspired, and be motivated to better yourself and the environment around you. It was a true honor to meet her, and she was actually there because of this vessel. This is the vessels we're talking about tonight will include the Sylvia Earle, which is named after her, and the Greg Mortimer, with another vessel to come next year. And this is an amazing vessel, and why I like this vessel on many levels. Firstly, it's incredibly stable. It has this rounded hull which absorbs a lot of the wave energy, which is really, really important if you're a slightly nervous traveler in the Southern Ocean. And but most interestingly, it has a dedicated citizen science lab on the ship. And I firmly believe that any vessel which sails down to Antarctica forthwith, I'd backdate it, should have a science facility, a science laboratory, so dedicated citizen science research can be carried out. It's really, really important to add this value to our voyages. Well, I'm nearly about to wrap up here. This is kind of perhaps the idealized landscape we have in our mind of Antarctica. It's life affirming, it's life changing, it's brilliantly white, it's icy, it's snowy, it's dramatic. There could be a few more penguins in this shot, but I just wanted to show you how beautiful this landscape is. But it's also a landscape which gives us, as temperatures rise globally and sea temperatures rise, gives us cause for concern. So my feeling is that when you go down there, you can enjoy this and you can have this intense feeling of satisfaction that you're actually playing a part in trying to decipher how we can protect this amazing environment by getting involved in citizen science. And on that very significant point I just made there, I'd like to end in a totally flippant way with a couple of penguins and say we would all like to thank you very much for listening.
Absolutely amazing there, Mark. Really, really fascinating to hear about the different citizen science projects. I could definitely, I do spend quite a lot of time staring at clouds, so I think I could definitely help NASA. But you know, I think you got it bang on. You know, we're really privileged to be able to travel to these incredible places. So whatever we can give back is just so important. So yes, thank you so much. Really interesting. I think everybody will agree. So now on to our second speaker. So Alex Cowan has been working within polar travel for over 10 years. He's been to the Arctic and Antarctic maybe 1 or 2 times. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you very much for that, Becky. So I'm Alex Cowan, coming to you from Loch Carron in the Northwest Highlands of Scotland. And I'm going to talk to you about a day in the life on board one of Aurora or AE Expeditions vessels. So 3 vessels, Greg Mortimer, Sylvia Earle, and Douglas Mawson. They're all very similar vessels, almost identical in layout inside, and they are beautiful vessels. As you can see here from the inside of Sylvia Earle, absolutely stunning spaces inside. Very, very comfortable. This is our citizen science lab that Mark was mentioning. And as you can see, it's a beautiful place to enjoy the scenery. So fantastic scenery from on board, fantastic food and drink. There's also fantastic entertainment spaces on board. This is upstairs, our observation lounge. And we also have some onboard entertainment, but the onboard entertainment is limited to an educational program. So it's limited to this because we want to enrich your experience and give you better understanding of what you're seeing outside. And because also, despite how beautiful and wonderful the ships are and how amazing the food and drink is, we see these just as vehicles to experience the outside. So we want you to spend as much time experiencing the outside as possible, which is why the onboard entertainment is limited to education. So fantastic spaces for experiencing the outside and seeing what there is around the vessel. And being small vessels, they can get into quite tight spaces as well. But we want to go well beyond just looking out from the ship and get you off the vessel. And we want to get you off the vessel as much as possible. So what does that mean? Well, in places like Antarctica and South Georgia and Svalbard, often that means getting off the vessel twice every day. So between breakfast and lunch, you'd get off for somewhere between 1 and 4 hours, and then the same again between lunch and dinner. So a morning excursion and an afternoon excursion. Some other places, this might be more or even less often. There might be times where we try to get out 3 times in a day, but there are also places where we might only get off once a day, or we might spend the whole day traveling. So places like the Northwest Passage and parts of Greenland, the distances are so great, we might choose to spend some time traveling so we can get to somewhere else to get off the vessel. We have a big expedition team on board, and there's enough on board to be able to get all of you off the ship at one time. So we prefer not to have people waiting on board, but to get you off the ship for as long as you want to be off the ship. These ships are designed as expedition vessels. They're not designed as cruise ships. They're designed as expedition vessels, and they have all the amenities that requires. So this is our mudroom. So this is a place where you can leave things like dirty boots and wet jackets, so your cabin can stay clean and dry. So you would come and get dressed in the mudroom when it's time to head out, and you would leave through one of these 2 doors at the back of the vessel, and you would step straight out of the mudroom through these doors into one of our rubber Zodiacs that you can see here. So Zodiac is just a brand name for these rubber boats that we use. So what would you do when you step into one of these rubber boats and head out? Well, we might plan to take you out on shore to head for a landing somewhere. So that might be for exercise. So you can see some people here hiking on Devon Island in the Canadian Arctic. It might be so that we can just set foot. Sorry if I can get this to progress. Set foot somewhere interesting. This is Zenith Point. Sorry. Zenith Point, the most northerly point of the North American mainland. Or it might be for beautiful scenery. This is on the Antarctic Peninsula. We might be heading to see some amazing wildlife, like this penguin colony in South Georgia. We can see all these king penguins. All these Adelie penguins, which we can see here in the Panola Strait on the Antarctic Peninsula. We might also be interested to go ashore somewhere where there's a historical site. This is Detai Island, south of the Antarctic Circle. But of course, there are historical and archaeological sites across the world. And some of the most amazing things that I've seen have been some of the archaeological sites of Inuit settlements in the Northwest Passage. We might also head out to a settlement. And so we can see here, this is Umanak in West Greenland. And when we do go to settlements, even though it's a place with infrastructure, we do still need the small rubber boats. So if you were to go on a much bigger vessel, you still wouldn't be able to go to these settlements. It requires a small boat to be able to get ashore. And what we're all about at AE Expeditions is being able to get you out and get your feet on the ground. We also use these small rubber boats to explore in themselves. We call this Zodiac cruising. And for a lot of people, this is their favorite thing to do. These boats are very small and maneuverable, but also really stable and comfortable. So people who are nervous about small boats very quickly find that they love how stable and comfortable and safe they are. So we love to go out and explore with them. We can get great views of penguins on ice, seals, and whales as well. And also we can get great view of the wildlife on shore. So we can see here some people in some kayaks, but before I go on to that, I'm going to say the landing and the Zodiac cruising we would describe as our core program. And for many people, this is the prime way to experience the places that we visit, to go on the hikes and to go out in the Zodiacs, and that is the way to do it. But we do include several adventure activities as well for people who are really interested in them. So we have the kayaking, and we can see now a video, kayakers on the Antarctic Peninsula here, and it can be a beautiful and peaceful way to explore. But with these adventure programs like kayaking, you don't need to feel as though if you don't sign up for these in advance, you will be missing out. As I mentioned, the core program is a fantastic way to experience Antarctica. But if you know that your dream is to kayak in Antarctica, or your dream is to kayak in the Northwest Passage, this might be the program for you. And indeed, it can be really, really beautiful, as you can see from this picture. We have a number of other adventure options as well. So you can see here the snorkel program, which can give a really different perspective on the places we're visiting. With these adventure programs, they're happening at the same time as the landings and Zodiac cruising that other people are taking part in. So if you were to sign up for, say, the snorkel program, you'd head out snorkeling, and then at the end of your snorkel, you would then see if there's time or space for you to come ashore, say, at the very end for a few minutes. And we can't always guarantee that, but the snorkel or kayak guys will also try to find some time for you to come ashore at the end, just to see what everyone else has been seeing. The way it's set up at AE Expeditions is perhaps a little different to some other operators. As was mentioned before, in most of the places we go, such as Antarctica, you can only land 100 people at a time. So if you've got a vessel with, say, 200 people, then half of those people are on shore and the other half are maybe out in the Zodiacs, or maybe they're waiting on the ship. At AE Expeditions, instead, there are so many people involved in things like snorkeling and kayaking and skiing and snowshoeing that actually we don't need to do that. And everything can work in a much more fluid and organic way. And it can feel much more natural to you. So you stay on shore for as long as you feel like you want to stay on shore before you head back to the ship, instead of being given times to queue up and wait. And it gives a very nice organic feel to the whole expedition. But as I mentioned before, there's lots of viewing space on the ship. And when you're in these places, it's really important to remember that you are in them. It's very easy to feel like once you've got back from the landing and stepped onto the ship, you've stepped out of Antarctica back onto that ship. But remember, you're always on board and the scenery is always incredible. During those times on board, that can be a time that we use for citizen science. So we might take part in some projects that we can do while we're on board, but also many of those projects happen onshore or happen in the Zodiacs as well. So if you want to take part in those projects, usually there'll be a sign up on board the night before or the morning of, and you'll let somebody know that you would like to come out to take part in a citizen science project while you're out. But sometimes, of course, being on the ship is actually the best thing you can do. So being on the ship as a viewing platform can be the best thing to do, because it's so stable, warm, and you can go in and out as you please, and you can cover a lot of ground. So this is a video here from the viewing platforms on Greg Mortimer as we pass through the famous Lemaire Channel. Going back on board the ship, so as mentioned, we'd head out in the morning and we'd head out in the afternoon. And it's usual on an expedition ship for us all to gather after that afternoon operation, for everyone to grab a gin and tonic or a glass of wine and to gather in the lecture theatre. And we can see this picture on the left, where your onboard experts in the expedition team who've been out driving your Zodiacs and guiding you on shore can stand up and give you some more context on the things you've seen and done that day and answer your questions. And the expedition leader will also take this opportunity to tell you about the plans for the day following. On the right-hand picture here, this is back in Sylvia Earle's Citizen Science Laboratory, and you can see these people who are back on board. Skipping forward. People who are back on board here, going through the data they've collected in the days preceding and how that data is going to be used. So you can see it can be very, very busy on board these vessels, but no matter what you choose to do, it's always incredibly beautiful and with an excellent educational program. So that's it from me. Over to you, Becky. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Alex. Yeah, again, I mean, I could watch that video of the Le Maire Channel, I think, forever. Absolutely beautiful scenery, and definitely sign me up for the snorkeling. That's definitely one to go onto the bucket list, snorkeling in Antarctica. So thank you very much to Hannah, Mark, and Alex for your great talks today. So if you want to start planning your trip, we'd love to talk to you about our polar voyages. So just get in touch with us, or if you have a preferred travel agent, you can also book through them. So still to come today, we have been getting lots and lots of questions coming into the team. They've been answering them as quickly as possible. We've saved some of those questions to talk about in a moment. And then after that, we're going to be revealing our exclusive event offer. And then one of you will also be selected at random to win in our prize draw. But right now, we are going to be welcoming back Alex and Mark, who are going to come and answer some of the questions that you've been asking us. Okay, thank you, Mark and Alex, for coming back. I've just been past the lovely questions that have come in. So we're going to kick off with one for you, Mark. Can anyone join in any survey, or will there be different ones for each voyage?
That's a good question. I mean, I've done a number of voyages, and they do vary. I've been on ships where there's been very little citizen science. The ones I ran through are fairly typical core activities of citizen science. Naturally, once you're on board, absolutely everybody can join in. And I think it's imperative that at least you try literally every one of each of them. So you might not want to do the cloud survey every day, but at least to experience it and learn actually how it functions and why we're doing it is important. But it does vary. And certainly in my experience, there's a couple of companies I've worked with who have been fantastic on the citizen science, really hot on it, and really making a great effort to put this at the forefront of their voyages. So
amazing. I'm guessing over time you're seeing more and more people looking for it, wanting to join in, when they're on those expeditions.
I think so. Yeah, I think I think there is a lot of concern naturally, and there should be about what's happening down all over the planet in terms of ecological and damage. So to actually feel we're kind of actively looking for ways how about we can give something back, and that's a part of a human response to make ourselves feel better about where we're going. But it's more than that. It is actually genuine research data you're collecting here, which can look at long-term solutions to tackle issues like climate and sea temperature change. So for me, it's a hugely valid part of any voyage.
No, absolutely. And Alex, you've got some absolutely incredible photos. Are there plenty of opportunities for kind of the shutterbugs out there to take time for photos when they're off the vessel?
Yes, absolutely. So when we're on shore, as I mentioned, you're normally on shore for a couple of hours, which is plenty of time. And there's usually a photography expert on board on the expedition team who's there to give some tips and to help people out. So if you're interested in photography, there's plenty of advice available for you on board. And there's always going to be like-minded people as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I definitely got help from the onboard photographer to help me take less out of focus pictures of albatross. And still over to you, Alex. What's the difference between the Greg Mortimer and the Sylvia Earle?
The differences are very minor between the vessels. It's the same number of passengers on board, an almost identical layout on board as well. So everything fundamentally is the same. The only real difference is Greg Mortimer at its bow has some little platforms that lower down. So that final video I showed is shot from that platform. And when they're in places like the Le Maire Channel, they'll lower those platforms, and it's a very beautiful place to view from. Sylvia Earle doesn't have those. Instead, the area those would lower from is the Citizen Science Lab. And that lab has these beautiful windows in the front. So it's a very beautiful space, but those windows are not really for viewing from, they're more for letting in light. Sylvia Earle also has a pool on top deck, which Greg Mortimer doesn't have, but I will caution people that pool is usually empty. My experience, all small vessels with pools, as soon as they start rolling, the pool empties itself onto the deck. So it's usually empty, especially in the drake.
Well, the theory's there. And much like myself, we've got people out there who'd be traveling solo. So what options are there for solo travelers on board?
So for solo travelers, usually either there's an option to share with another solo traveler, but a lot of operators will offer the option of taking a cabin for yourself. And if they look around, some operators sometimes will do like a no single traveler supplement. So people might want to look for that amongst the operators as well.
Nice. And back to you, Mark, finally. So apart from the science nerding, what's your favorite activity on board?
Oh, gosh, that's I usually try to skip lunch because the food is so good, and you end up feeling, oh my gosh, if I go for lunch, then I've had it, or afternoon tea. So no, on a serious front, absolutely going out. I spend a lot of time out on deck, particularly when we're down in the peninsula or other parts of Antarctica, with my camera. I've got a long lens, and I'm looking for wildlife. I absolutely love the seabird service, and just going out there and trying to photograph seabirds, and learning about that. But whales are pretty much my obsession, actually. So I'm always out there looking for.
Yeah, it is one of those things, isn't it? The more you spend out on deck looking, the more you see, really.
I think it's the whole excuse me, the whole experience is just and it's an amazing experience, as I said, a life-changing experience. And yeah, sorry, I'm not choking.
It's a lot.
The emotion.
Yeah, absolutely, they have that effect. So the team are still busily answering your questions. If we've not got yet to yours, we will. We're also going to be sharing some of the most frequently asked questions and answers with the event recording via email by the end of the week. But of course, we are just email or a call away if you do want to get in touch and ask us any additional in-depth questions that we haven't got to today. So I'll say thank you very much to Mark and Alex. So next up is the prize draw, where one lucky winner is going to win a box of lovely Sea Change wines. We have it here in the office. It is a delightful wine, so very jealous of who is going to win there. So we've selected one of you at random, and the winner today is Hugh Digby. So congratulations. We're going to be in touch with you via email, and we'll get your prize sorted. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Fascinating subject. I could have listened to both of them all day, to be honest, and I definitely want to sign up for those citizen science projects. Please look out for the email in the next few days, which is going to have the recording, also the offer, and there'll also be a short feedback survey. If you can fill that in, let us know what you liked and didn't like. I hope you've enjoyed yourself today. Goodbye.